Oregon fans, I'm just telling you now, I don't expect the Ducks to go to Penn State and win. What happens if they do, though? Let's cross it over and find out.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, and Locked On Nittany Lions, that is Zach Seyko. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with each of these respective teams who square off in Penn State, of course, in Happy Valley on September 27th. What a game. It will be one of the biggest games really in all of college football this season. How is each team going to be able to handle that? What's the quarterback debate look like? Who's got the better coach? We'll talk about it all today on the show, which is brought to you by our friends over at the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. So, Oregon's win total, Seyko, like Penn State's, last I had checked, is tied for the highest in all of college football at 10.5. And for Oregon, if the Ducks win this game, my perception of the 2025 Oregon football team will undergo a radical shift. Because this is the game. I predicted them to go 12-0 last year. I was correct on that front. Saw the Big Ten championship matchup with Penn State. I thought they'd win, and they did. This game, though, just favors Penn State in so many ways. I do not expect, I think it's possible Oregon wins. I don't think Penn State's going to be a 10, 12, 15-point favorite here. I'd be surprised if it is anything less than Penn State minus 4.5.
I did not think we were going to go into this conversation agreeing on a lot of things here because
well, that's boring.
I know, but let me get Oregon fans fired up anyway, because I do think this is, at least at this time, we are talking so early in the offseason, so a lot could change. Penn State, with where they are going into the early part of the season, if this was an Oregon team that they faced later on, because I have the same perception about Ohio State, they're breaking in a new quarterback. Okay, Julian's saying Dante Moore. So Dante Moore's going on the road to Beaver Stadium. Who knows if that's going to be a big noon kickoff? Right? That makes things even worse if that's a possibility for the Ducks.
That would be way worse.
So you're playing a 9 a.m. Pacific time game. Okay, so regardless of that, though, but if we're talking X's and O's, you have a fourth-year veteran quarterback in Drew Aller in a second year with Andy Kotelnicki going up against Dante Moore. Now, I know he's been with the team, but this is his full series. But since he's essentially taken another back seat because he was playing on and off at UCLA, but now you got to get him used to the system starting. You're also breaking in a new offensive line, some new weapons in the receiving game. That takes time. Whereas Penn State, with what it's going to do with its bread and butter, run the football a lot, they're mostly going to be settled in early in the season. So if this game was later on, I'd think a little differently, but I think I'm fairly confident that Penn State will win this game by at least a touchdown.
If this, at least a touch. I don't know if I'm there. I
think the spread's 6.5. When it's
here's where I come down, Seyko, and why this is a game that I put in not lightly shaded pencil, but fairly dark pencil as a loss on Oregon's schedule. You have to go across the country. Penn State is at home coming off of a bye, and Penn State has far more continuity everywhere you look. These teams matched up in the Big Ten championship game, and Penn State made a run, of course, and it was close until the Nico Reed game-sealing interception. Oregon jumped out to a 28-10 lead. Why? To me, it looked like they were the better team on the field. Penn State made it closer, but they kept them at an arm's length. They never actually trailed the entire game, and they scored on their first 3 or 4 consecutive drives. That was a well-played game for Oregon offensively. I don't know how you can anticipate or expect, if you're an Oregon fan, on the road in the 5th game of the Dante Moore era and the biggest road test by far. They only will have left Autzen Stadium once at this point in time. They will have gone to play Northwestern. That's not a major challenge or anything like that. Yeah, Oregon Oregon goes to Northwestern before they play Oregon State. And I just think the disadvantages are so numerous, and Penn State is far more similar to the team they were in that Big Ten championship game than Oregon. It's not even really close. Penn State's got 4 offensive linemen back, the quarterback, 2 running backs, bunch of starters on defense. Oregon's 105th in the country in returning production. I think winning this game would be monumental for Dan Lanning and company, because on paper, I think all the pressure is squarely on the shoulders of Penn State and James Franklin here, Zach.
The pressure, yeah, if you're looking at from the James Franklin can't win big games approach, because this would be huge for
Who's ever said that before? Come on now.
I've never heard it.
Never heard it? No, this is the first time? Oh.
So, pressure, it depends, because, I mean, Oregon and Penn State are chasing after the same thing. They're going after a Big Ten title. So all of the circumstances aside, the goals are still similar. Oregon views itself as a Big Ten national title contending team. So does Penn State, but I think Penn State's in a better spot to start the season and throughout as well. I think Penn State's at least positioned to be more of a title contender than Oregon overall. With that being said, so if you want to say there is some pressure because Penn State just can't buck that trend, James Franklin loses every big game that he's in, so be it. But I think every team is a new team. When you compare it, Ohio State was just better. Michigan was just better. Oregon was just better. That's the fact of the matter, is that Penn State was losing these games when they were projected as an underdog. It has nothing to do with the fact that, Penn State just absolutely crumbles in prime time. No, it has to do with the fact that those opponents in that moment, Ohio State won a national championship. Michigan won a national championship. Oregon was better than Penn State at that point in time in the Big Ten championship game. So I don't think – I think that's an individual case-by-case basis and not something, James Franklin can never – okay, because if that was the case, then he would have they would have lost in to SMU and to Boise State. I guess you can say Notre Dame. That one's a toss-up, but it was close. It was close, but close obviously doesn't matter. So I guess if that's what the one you want to point to. I don't know. I don't think it extends over season by season. But this is the breakthrough one, because then you can say, but maybe we'll shift the goalposts. That it wasn't really a big game. Oregon's not on the same page as Penn State right now. They're breaking in a new quarterback. It's always going to change.
Here's an interesting question that you and I discussed before we have recorded today. Who's got the better coach? Just head coach. We're not going to go to the coordinators yet. And Oregon fans will remind you that Jim Knowles, who ran circles around Will Stein in the Rose Bowl back on January 1st, is now Penn State's defensive coordinator. So let's leave the coordinators out of this. No touching of the hair or face. But which head coach do you think is better, James Franklin or Dan Lanning? I know what my answer is, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
It's close. I think Dan Lanning is a better head coach overall. Coordinators certainly help. Financial backing certainly helps.
Well, Penn State's not short on dollars over there.
But they are still not they're not, we want to talk about not being on the same page. Phil Knight is bankrolling Oregon to make sure that it gets a national title. Penn State has donors. NIL is getting into a better spot, but it's not this all-out aggression to where that James Franklin would like to have. Every program would like to have that.
Was Trevor Pena not an aggressive addition? I mean, he was asking for about $2 million as a transfer wide receiver.
For the first time in quite some time, Penn State makes that kind of move.
Okay, but I mean
that's not a routine thing.
It at least represents a certain financial level of where they're at now.
Now, but what about the year before and the year before that? So, if we're talking directly head to head, who would you rather have as a head coach, as a program leader? Hey, look, I'm probably still going to stick with James Franklin for the sake of he fits best at Penn State, because I don't think that all coaching experiences are equal. You can't just drop whomever into a situation and expect them to succeed. So that's kind of the frame of mind that I come at with, that James Franklin is actually very well suited to be at Penn State. And I'm not saying that Dan Lanning or somebody else could not succeed. I'm saying that James Franklin is best suited to do that. But if we're talking head to head, I mean, as of right now, Dan Lanning has proved accordingly so, since we're not allowed to talk about coordinators here. But I do want to bring in coordinators. I think Penn State overall has the better coaching staff compared to Oregon. That's close.
See, that's something we're just going to have to debate in the next segment, because it's an interesting conversation. And each of us has got a primary strength for these teams. How does the other side handle it? A lot more coming over on this Locked On crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Nittany Lions. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they're all about. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50%, that's half, off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. All right, Seyko, let's start with the coordinator discussion that we were having earlier. I think I agree with you as much as I like Oregon's coordinators. Like
You're
want to
fun, man.
Yeah, I'm boring. Me and my honesty.
I was ready to go back and forth and debate, which Homer is more correct.
Yeah, I mean, here's
so nuanced with
so I'm also thinking about it from an opposite coordinator standpoint, where not Will Stein against Andy Kotelnicki. I think that is closer to a wash. I really do.
That's they're both top 5 in college football
100%.
Objectively.
Yeah, no, 100%. No one has produced back-to-back Heisman Trophy finalist quarterbacks except Will Stein. That's never been done in Oregon history. That hasn't been done in college football in the last couple of years outside of the Ducks. Like, there's certainly any coordinator is going to have his critics amongst the fan base. I've never been a Will Stein hater, if you will. I have always been.
I don't know how you could. It's the same thing when people try to dunk on Andy Kotelnicki.
Yeah, it's first world problems. That's what it comes down to.
Top 10
I think for both of these programs. Yeah, top 10 program problems is, wow, 34 points a game. What is that like? I don't know. If you did that at Iowa, you might get a lifetime extension. And Iowa's a solid program. But I'm thinking about this in the coordinator versus the coordinator he's going up against. So Will Stein, this is another reason that I look at this game, Zach, and I just struggle to get behind. I feel like Oregon should win. Can they? Yeah, but they'd have to play such a good brand of football for a team that's going to have a bunch of newcomers. But I know Will Stein has gotten better from year 1 to year 2. I'm sure he'll get better from year 2 to year 3. But it was this calendar year that now Penn State's defensive coordinator just, let's call it how we see it. He clowned him. He clowned. Like, first time around, advantage Stein. Second time around, once you're making adjustments, that was big time Jim Knowles. And Knowles beat Stein in the Rose Bowl more than Stein beat Knowles in the matchup at Autzen Stadium. So that's the big one for me. And then Kotelnicki, I think, is really good and can be a head coach. And I think Tosh Lupoy is someone who's made Oregon's defense better and better over the last couple of years. But I also watched them go at it. And that was, again, advantage Kotelnicki in the matchup that we saw in the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, so we did. I mean, we got to see it on full display. I guess what Oregon has going for it, we talk about the changes with quarterback and new weapons and trying to build some chemistry. I guess you can say the same thing for Penn State, is that Jim Knowles is coming in as a first-year defensive coordinator, so Penn State has to make a defensive adjustment, but it's not an overhaul. I don't want to speak for everybody, but there are plenty of vocal Ohio State fans that have said, well, have fun trying to get used to Jim Knowles' defense. It'll take a 2-3. You're lucky if it's 2 years, and then it'll be that third year is when it turns the corner. Penn State's already been making adjustments to Jim Knowles' defense. There's some wrinkles and stuff that they need to ultimately add in, and, communication, verbiage, that kind of thing. But it's not like Tom Allen was there and had this 5-6 year defensive blueprint that they followed along. Penn State's actually been transitioning to a 4-2-5 defense from Manny Diaz into Tom Allen's system. Tom Allen's system was a 4-2-5. So you're just getting Jim Knowles's iteration of a 4-2-5. So this lag period, maybe you'll see it show up in week 4 for Penn State, game 4 for Penn State against a very quality Oregon team. But to say that it's this overhaul and that there's no chance that the system's going to settle in is wrong. Penn State will adapt to it sooner rather than later, but how soon can they do it? And will they have that many those problems where they step on their own toes against a team that will make you pay regardless who's a quarterback and what players you're trying to build chemistry with?
Yeah, I'll take Oregon's head coach because I like Dan Lanning a lot, and I like that the staff has a lot of continuity. Yeah, he's pretty good. It turns out he's like 36-5, something in that ballpark as Oregon's head coach. That's pretty good for your first 3 years, no matter which program you're taking over. But I want to go back to on the field here, Seyko, or get to an on the field question. I'll throw at you what I think Oregon's greatest strength is going to be, and you tell me how capable you think Penn State is of responding to it or neutralizing it in a sense, and then you do the same with me.
Sure.
I think Oregon's defensive line is freaking awesome. I think they are
perfect.
Not as good as last year, but man, I think they can be really close. Mateo Uiagalelei is going to be a first-round pick, probably top 10 in the 2026 NFL draft. Tatum Tuioti has just been rock solid over the last couple of years. Bear Alexander looks like the best version of himself coming over from USC. Oh yeah. The one time Penn State, didn't he have wasn't there the photo of him on the visit to Penn State and he put his arm in the air and he had the Georgia tattoo in the photo? Like that was just peak college football. But I'm bullish on Amari Washington. The depth behind with blue chip guys like former 5-star Elijah Rushing, who looked great in the spring game. Blake Purchase looked really good. Like, I think the depth is just crazy for this defensive line. So that's the unit I have the biggest expectation for.
It's a strength on strength. You just got done talking about my side of things where Penn State's offensive line returns 4 of its starters, probably some of the best depth in college football. And I've gone on the record conservatively. I think this is the top 3 best offensive line in college football, with a case to be number 1 overall and there be a clear gap. They have it's not just 2 deep, it's 3 deep, and it's guys that would be starting at other places happen to be a backup at Penn State. There's going to be so much turnover after this season, which is why they're staying, because they're waiting their turn. There might be probably four new offensive starters on the O-line going into 26, but that doesn't matter. So it is a strength on strength. And Penn State, that was actually a matchup you and I talked about in the Big Ten championship, that, hey, Oregon's D-line is going to get after Drew Aller, and they won their respective battles, but it wasn't this dominant.
Did they? Didn't really seem that way. I think they sacked him once, and the Nittany Lions ran all over the Ducks.
I'm saying, well, that you beat me to my point, is that Oregon won some of its respective matchups here and there, but it wasn't the way we saw it going. That's when Penn State's offensive line actually had its breakout moment, was the Oregon Big Ten championship game. They had put it all together. They were in sync for the most part. Like I said, they lost a couple matchups here and there. Drew Aller was under pressure and just made some superhero type of plays to offset it. I mean, someone was pulling on his jersey and he threw a touchdown late in the game to kind of get it closer. I think of those moments, but yeah, they ran all over them with 2 NFL caliber running backs, and you have that all back. So that wasn't even their peak moment. That's when they started to figure it out. And, that group is now better, more in sync. The chemistry's built. Everybody's just going to improve. So you talk about, hey, they have some change, because I think Derek Harmon's not there anymore.
Nope. And he's a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yes. And another defensive tackle, if I'm not mistaken.
Jordan Birch is not there, and Jamari Caldwell is not there. Birch is with the Cardinals. Caldwell's with the Chargers. Those guys were all taken in the first 3 rounds. Birch, I think, was in the 3rd. Caldwell was in the 3rd. And Harmon was in the 1st.
So Penn State has its entire offensive line back, and then Drew Aller and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. So there's that. Hey, that's great that Oregon's defensive line has it. That's its strength, but so is Penn State's counterpart on the offensive line.
Was that the strength you were gonna toss in my direction?
I was gonna say the ground game, stopping Singleton and Allen primarily.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's going to be probably some third running back usage too. They very well might run a wishbone against Oregon, and that's when it might be I'm serious. They have so many running backs.
Yeah.
I have no idea how none of them transferred out. So that's what you point. Hey, Penn State's not, short on money or anything. That is true. But they didn't have their NIL situation in order either for the time being. So they've been able to at least maintain this roster in years where you would have seen some turnover and some attrition because there were other opportunities. But I think long-term that, hey, Singleton and Allen are going to move on, which means that Penn State is going to have 2 co-starting running back spots open up, whatever the case was. But it's those 2, and then they're going to run that wrinkle with Andy Kotelnicki where you're going to see a third running back on the field, and whoever gets the football, good luck trying to stop them behind that offensive line.
Yeah, the linebacker position going up against these 2 running backs going to be a big test for some young guys. I mean, you've got Devin Jackson and Bryce Betcher who, presuming they're healthy, they'll be starting a linebacker, and they've seen this offense before. I certainly like that for the Ducks defense, but you're going to have at least one young guy who's seeing Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, and that could be, a welcome to college football moment for a guy like Jerry Mixon, who I think should be Oregon's number 3 linebacker going into this year, which means he's a heavy rotation guy. And that welcome to college football moment could be these are NFL ready backs who I thought Penn State was going to be lucky to get one of them back. The fact that they both return, it bolsters what, you and I have talked about over on Locked On College Football, Penn State's national championship expectations, not goals, not aspiration. No, expectations are there for Penn State to get to the national championship game. I will feel that way about Oregon more, I think, in 2026, depending on what happens in the offseason, than I do in 25. Certainly, though, I do expect Oregon to be a playoff team. They're working in a new quarterback. Penn State is not, of course. How does that matchup play out? Who are those guys even throwing to? We'll wrap up this crossover talking about that. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals save you up to 60%. I have used Game Time for a sporting event, for a comedy show, and the experience was awesome. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's talk quarterbacks in this matchup, Seyko. A tale of 2 different guys and 2 very different careers. Now, both were 5 stars coming out of high school, and Aller has, in the way too early mock drafts, been a top 10 projected pick in 2026. And by the way, I saw one mock that had him going to the Browns, and I thought, boy, that's a place I don't want that guy to go. I don't want anybody.
I mean, he's from Ohio. I think he was a Browns fan growing up. It'd be a dream
That's unfortunate.
Come true for him.
That's unfortunate.
Feel bad for him.
It's a horrible organization. I mean, like, I root for some bad ones. Not Oregon, of course, because they're well run and committed. But, like, I root for the Mariners. I root for the Blazers. Like, they're not very well run at all. The Browns are worse. They are worse. I hate that Dylan Gabriel went there. Absolutely hate it for him. Now he's caught in the Shedeur Sanders web. And it's the one spot I don't want any Oregon player to go in the NFL. So anyway, bringing this back to the game on September 27th, Drew Aller has started, I don't even know how many games at this point. Dante Moore started, I think it was 3 or 4 at UCLA. It was less than half a season that he was the starting quarterback that rolled out there for snap 1. He hasn't officially been named at the time of recording of this show, Zach, but that's the expectation, is that he'll be the starter. And again, I can just keep coming up with reasons and why I land on, I'm not going to expect Oregon to win this game. I'll be excited if they do, but I'm not going to expect it. I've got a veteran quarterback on the other side, and this is going to be the biggest game of Dante Moore's career.
It's all those factors combined. I mean, Drew Aller is a good quarterback, no matter what people want to say. He now has the weapons to be even better. Oh, well, he had Tyler Warren last season. Then why did people spend every single big game dunking on the wide receivers? Now they have that pretty squared away. Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross. Oh, well, he's just some former Troy receiver, former group of 5 guy. I think he'll be the best out of the 3 of them. And then they got Trevor Pena from Syracuse.
Hi, Teacher, could I raise a point?
Sure.
Oregon fans are not going to dunk on former Troy receivers. That's not a thing that will happen in the chat. Like, I get where you're coming from with the, people might think, he's coming from Troy. Yes, casuals. Yes, that is the exact correct word.
I'm not talking about Oregon fans unless there's Oregon fans that are casuals.
No, every fan base has got them, of course.
I know that.
I forgot that Ross came from Troy, and I was just laughing at the dichotomy of like, Oregon fans are here in Troy, transfer receiver. Dang, you guys got a good one.
Yeah. No, and Ross could be the best of the bunch. Hey, Trevor Pena, you and I know you host.
I like Pena a lot.
Yeah, and he's not going to be the main guy. Ross gives Penn State so much versatility because of his speed and just how much he's become a better football player. Because I came in when I saw Devontae Ross, had a casual impression that, okay, he is Amari Evans's replacement. Evans went to Washington, so that somewhat impacts Oregon, I suppose. There's that familiarity connection. So he's that deep threat. Okay, that's where Ross takes over. But it's not just that. He is going to be used in a bunch of different ways that they wanted to use Evans, but Evans, for whatever reason, couldn't handle that workload. So that's what Ross is doing, is that he is going to be involved in the plays and the formations that Amari Evans, they would have liked him to because of that speed, but for whatever reason could never handle it. Ross can. You combine that with another veteran in Kyron Hudson. You combine that with another veteran in Trevor Pena. They lose Tyler Warren. Okay, well, guess what? There's a 5-star tight end waiting in the wings with Luke Reynolds. Khalil Dinkins has played a lot of college football at tight end as well. So it's this Andy Kotelnicki offense that Drew Aller now gets to work in for the second year in a row with a bunch of different options, as opposed to force feeding Tyler Warren and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. It's Singleton and Allen plus Kyron Hudson plus Devontae Ross plus Trevor Pena, Luke Reynolds, and Khalil Dinkins. And again, that third running back that's going to rotate in as well, probably Quentin Martin, just to throw out a name. Not everybody's going to be familiar with him, but it's the variety of weapons that Penn State has that they didn't a season ago, and defenses could hyper-focus on Tyler Warren and the running backs exclusively, and now you can't do that. Pick your poison.
Yeah, I think it's it's an upgraded array of offensive weapons, even with the loss of Warren. I just think the jump in receiver production potentially is really good. On the Oregon side of things, for who Dante Moore's throwing the ball to, I love this receiving core. Depth, talent, experience, it's all there. It is all there across the board. I don't know exactly how the rotations are going to work, but you've got Dacorian Moore coming into the fold. You've got Evan Stewart back. Didn't see him in the spring game. I think he's still working his way back from an injury. Malik Benson's an experienced guy who can be really explosive. Justice Lowe is really solid. Gary Bryant Jr. is a veteran. Like, I can keep going. Dylan Gresham was one of the biggest standouts of Oregon's spring game, and he wasn't expected to do anything this year, at least in my view. And I think the depth of wide receiver for Oregon is crazy good. So I think both quarterbacks are really well supported. I think Oregon has more questions along the offensive line than Penn State, just because you're working in 4 new guys from a year ago. Yeah. And I do like the continuity that does exist is at the center position. I think that's crucial for Poncho going into his second year starting. But I just wanted to ask you real quick, Seyko, how big is Devontae Ross?
How, like, his actual tangible size?
Yeah. Like, how big is he?
5'10", because I just explained the impact, but I'll do it again. 5'10", and he's put on weight, so I think 180, 185.
Okay, so slightly bigger, but not that much bigger. Let it be known, Penn State has the new Tez Johnson in college football. The undersized, fast transfer from Troy. That could be a guy. Tez, of course, went crazy in the Big Ten championship game, was the offensive MVP. Where does Oregon replace that production? It could be Dacorian Moore. It could be Justice Lowe. It could be Gary Bryant Jr. It could be a combination of the three. So it'll be a huge game. Pressure, I think, is on Penn State. I expect them to win. I would so love to be wrong. And if Oregon wins this game, I will force Seyko to do a post-game crossover show with me just so we can talk about how wrong I truly was.
That's a tar and duck feather type of thing if that happens.
Yeah. Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks. Hope you enjoyed this edition of a Locked On College crossover. We appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.